So in this latest move, could this mean that both the countries have been sitting on a treaty that has been negatively affecting the U.S. all this time?
Well, obviously, the United States has benefited tremendously from this treaty and from having access to bases throughout Japan, including in Okinawa, which is often very controversial because many of the residents oppose those bases. But it has allowed the United States to project power in East Asia. It has assisted in protecting other treaty allies, such as South Korea, where the U.S. also has bases, but the bases and the naval presence in Japan augment the presence in South Korea. And it also allows the United States to project power towards the South China Sea, which in recent years has become a very controversial area given China's rather expansive sovereignty claims in the South China Sea. So clearly the United States has benefited from the structure of the treaty. But it's also fair to question whether revisions are necessary or whether it's too one-sided. And that's probably what got Donald Trump's attention when President Trump was told that this defense assistance obligation is a bit one-sided in the sense that the U.S. would come to defend Japan, but Japan is not obligated to actually defend the United States.
But isn't this something that in the beginning, when the treaty was signed, everyone was pretty much aware of, considering Japan's pacifist sort of approach to this, that they wouldn't take it to war, they wouldn't pick up arms? Why would he bring it up right now? What do you make of the timing?
Yeah, that's the important point, though. The structure of the agreement worked at the time. It was in the decades after World War II. As you mentioned earlier, there was an initial version of the treaty, and subsequently it was revised. But it's now over 50 years. And this is actually the interesting point, is Shinzo Abe has also been calling for revisions to the pacifist constitution. He is interested in Japan having the ability to project its power abroad and not just serve as a self-defense force, as it's officially known, and for Japan to play a role in international security that's really commensurate with the size of its economy and the role that Japan otherwise plays in multilateral institutions. So from that perspective, actually, Donald Trump's comments are fairly consistent with the goals of Japan's prime minister. It's only a lot of critics of President Trump, some media who are saying, wow, how could you criticize this treaty? But again, it's fair to ask this many decades after the treaty was signed, whether or not it's time to revise it and actually to enshrine a greater obligation for Japan.
But then does Japan have that much to offer where President Trump would question that why is it not an equal give and take in terms of if it needs Japan's on the forefront as its ally?
Well, even though they're called the self-defense forces, the reality is Japan does spend a reasonable, more than a reasonable amount on its defense compared to some of its neighbors or as measured as a percentage of its GDP. And again, Shinzo Abe has been very committed to improving the posture of Japan's defense forces. So they certainly have been investing in equipment. They're investing in additional capabilities, whether it's in the air or on the sea. So it would be unfair to say they don't have anything to offer as far as engaging in hostilities or in defensive actions or coming to the aid of the United States. I mean, they are very well trained. They have very close cooperation with the United States, frequent exercises, for example. So this is a very effective fighting force, actually.
Okay. And another point that President Trump raised was that anybody who had the privilege of getting Washington's protection should also pay up in kind.
Well, that always is a bit of a complex formula because we have to also consider the subsidies that go towards the bases, whether it's South Korea that pays a portion of the U.S. base presence in South Korea or Japan, which pays a portion towards the cost of U.S. bases in Japan, or they're paying the cost to shift the bases in Okinawa, which again has been a very controversial issue with the population and the residents there. But certainly Japan does pay a lot, and also Japan does purchase a large amount of U.S. military equipment as well. So it wouldn't be accurate to say that they are freeloading off of the United States. But again, when it comes to multilateral security matters or assistance to U.S. efforts in other parts of the world, I think it's fair to say that at this point in time, Japan should behave like a mature member of international society and as an ally of the United States.